Welcome to the Being Champions podcast. In this podcast, we'll unlock and discover the key elements that defines being a champion coach and dive into the principles that create a culture where everyone thrives and wants to be a part of. Well, we'd like to welcome you all to our first episode of the Being Champions podcast. And really, guys, I know we've been sitting around and we've been talking about this for a long time. And really what we do is we love talking about coaching and creating environments where all our kids can thrive and making sure we have the best experience every single day we show up for coaches. So again, I'm excited to be here, but I'm going to kick it over to our two other co-hosts, Jared and Mike, kind of get a quick introduction and we'll jump into this session.
Yeah, so I'm Jared Rust. I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the conversations that we've been having for years, getting to be shared with some of our listeners and give them maybe some things that they can take away that are going to impact their teams, their programs, whatever it might be that they're working with as a coach. It might just be a way that you hear something new. My background's coming from a long time spent in the soccer world, semi-professionally, collegiately, youth level, you name it. So I'm really excited to get going.
Love it. Michael.
I'm Mike Hibbs. Been coaching for a very long time, as everybody knows around here. But I'm very excited about this too. I know that some of the best conversations I've had in my years has been after we go to a coach's clinic and pick up great ideas. But a lot of that has always been just basketball coaches. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to, I've loved listening to you, Matt, and you, Jared, about what you guys face and the different sports. And I think that it's even better for us to help across sports as opposed to just being, because you can get sucked into that one idea and one way of seeing things. And this is, I think, a great way for us to expand our vision, to see things more clearly and from a different perspective. And really looking forward to that. I've been coaching, I coached basketball for 43 years. So I've all the way from pre-K kids, little kids, just having fun with them, all the way up through very, very talented high school basketball teams. So I'm excited to be here with you guys, and I appreciate you including me.
Yeah, I love everything you were talking about. And the thing that jumped out, and I think this is the purpose of this podcast, is as coaches, we need to lean on each other. Right, and we need to understand the whole coaching landscape and navigating this new environment where there's NIL deals and the professionalization of sports right now. So the whole climate, the whole environment has changed. So that's really our goal, our mission right now is to create this for everyone, for all the coaches. I don't care what sport you coach, the things we want to talk about as far as mental performance and creating culture and creating learning environments. All this stuff is geared towards the things that go beyond just tactics and scoreboards. And that kind of dives into what we wanted to talk about today. And I think where sometimes we struggle as coaches is we rush into wanting to teach the tactics and wanting to teach the strategies, and we think we're going to create buy-in that way. But a few years ago, I learned a great lesson from one of my mentors, and they just sat there and they told me, listen, Matt, coaching's not about you, but it starts with you, right? And understanding, trying to figure out, what is my vision? What is my mission? What are my values? And one of the coolest stories I heard was from my mentor, Dr. Jerry Lynch, and he was telling me a story about Steve Kerr. And when Steve Kerr first got his job with the Golden State Warriors, Steve was all fired up, but Steve had no idea what he wanted to do. So one of Steve's favorite people to learn from was Pete Carroll. So immediately Steve jumps on a plane, he reaches out to Pete Carroll, he goes out there and he sits down with Carroll after the first practice. And Pete Carroll said, "Hey, Steve, what kind of system are you going to run?" And Steve sat there and he was like, well, what do you mean? What kind of offense am I going to run? What kind of defense? He goes, "No, I'm not worried about that stuff. Steve, what is your environment going to feel like? What is the experience going to be like? How are people going to feel when they show up to the Golden State Warrior practice field? And that's what it's about. Like, it's understanding beyond tactics, beyond the scoreboard. It's understanding why we're here and what our vision is. So I wanted to kick it over to you, Jared. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, as far as how do you define vision? Like, what do you do before you get in front of your kids for the first time to create this buy-in and to create this environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea of culture is like one of those buzzwords among all sports at all levels these days. But I think even though it's talked about so much, it's still underutilized, which is fascinating to me because of all the years coaching. If I look back and I see the ones that were more successful, the ones that were less successful, the years we did things with teams that we maybe didn't think we were going to have the squad to do, and we look back to why. So much of the time it was coming back to the things we were focusing on that were away from the court at the beginning. And making sure that, we had our expectations of what we believed in, what we were going to do every single day, that were really the true identifiers of what we were defined by. And we would get everybody to buy into that piece first. So the importance of the brotherhood, the importance of, our simple standards that we would incorporate with our teams that stayed consistent year upon year, where players that had been in the program for multiple years were able to continue to carry the torch. Yep. And then players that were new to the program were able to jump right onto a wagon that's already rolling. That way we could really bring them along quickly, and get guys to realize that being a part of something is a lot more than just showing up to practice. It was, how do you carry yourself? How do you speak to your teammates? How do you care for your teammates? How do you show up for them on a regular basis in the classroom? How do you show up for them on a regular basis with how you take care of your locker room? You name it, all the simple details that separate you from just some average athlete. A lot of times has nothing to do with your stats, has nothing to do with the amount of goals you score, has nothing to do with any of those things. It's the relationships that you're building within your teammates. And once those relationships start forming, those are the easy things to focus on. And so we talk a lot in our program about, results are a byproduct of who we are, what environment we create, and sticking to our culture with our vision and our standards and everything that we love to talk about as coaches. But in the end of the day, the environment that we're creating for our athletes on a daily basis is taking the sole focus at the front end.
I love that. And so thinking it on a personal level now, with you before you go into a season, like when you're sitting down and you're trying to form your vision, like what are you trying to create for yourself personally for your kids? Like what are you striving for every single day as a coach and understanding what your why is?
Yeah, clarity.
Yeah.
As much simplicity and clarity as I can come to grips with to make sure that my athletes can understand what I'm asking for.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we've got this perfect picture in our heads as coaches of exactly what it's supposed to look like. And there's a disconnect with our athletes understanding how to deliver on what that vision is. Mm-hmm. And so if we can just simplify things and break things down at a very, very easy level, then our athletes can understand where we're coming from as coaches. We can be on the same page. We can even share with them where we want this vision to go. Yeah. But that we need to do these building blocks first, and then we can sprint together, and we're going to be a force. So I think just, I had an old mentor, one of his things that he would tell us almost daily was brilliance is simplicity done 100% well. And so the understanding of just do the simple things really well, then correlated to me as a coach, then I have to deliver simple. And then they can execute simple, and we will become brilliant. And so that was huge for me as a coach to recognize I don't need to teach the elaborate. Mm-hmm. The elaborate comes out in the creativity of the players when they understand the blueprint, when they understand what we're trying to do as a team culturally and what we stand for. The beautiful, incredible, individual actions in a game or whatever, those are just moments. But the consistencies is just the simplicity done well all the time.
I love that. And Mike, I'm going to kick it over to you here in a minute. And I know, as I hear Jared talk, and we had a meeting this morning, and this concept kept coming up, and it was saying, know thyself. And what does that mean to you, Mike? Because you've been in the game for a long time. And I know you talk about this a lot, even in the classroom. So stretching it beyond just athletics, like what is this concept of know thyself, and why is it so important as coaches to know who we are first before we create buy-in with our players?
Right. I think, that's the Delphic Oracle who has that written and over the door to get into the Oracle, which is to help you understand yourself. Is that you have to know yourself. It's the same thing that happens to Neo, who's going to be the one in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And she says, being the one is like being in love. No one can tell you are. You know it. You just feel it. And so, but she said, but first you have to know who you are in order to do that. And I always tell my students, like, how can you be true to yourself if you don't know who that self is? Mm-hmm. And of course, as a coach, the most important characteristic is being authentic, being genuine. I mean, because those kids know. You're with them so long. They know if you're in it for them or you're in it for yourself.
Right.
And that is a big thing. And I know initially when I started coaching that wins was most important to me.
Yeah.
You just see that and you get judged by that. I wanted to prove I was a good coach.
Yeah.
And that was going to be proven by, like you just talked about, me putting in all these great plays and, oh my gosh, deriving these defenses and that nobody else had. And I was just like, but I always felt that, we won games because we were talented, the teams that I coached initially. But I felt like there was something missing. Like I wasn't getting enough out of it either.
Right.
And so I sat down and decided that, well, from my mentor as well, like you need a philosophy. You need a why.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing this for? Is it just for the wins? And then what? You're going to go somewhere else. You're going to try to get to the next level or whatever you're going to do to use that. But it all came back to, I didn't know why I wanted to coach, other than I love the game and I like being around kids because I'm a teacher. But I didn't know, like, what did I want to get out of this?
Yeah.
Like, what did I want my kids to get out of it? What did I want my players to get out of this? And basically, I got a great compliment from one of my players who played sparingly, off and on, but he said, you know what, Coach? You made me a better person. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's what I'm after. I want them to be better people by experiencing the culture, the climate, and being a member of our team. Yeah. And I want them to be good men.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of, John Wooden talks about with success. He's like, well, ask me in 20 years, right?
Exactly.
Don't define me by my wins and losses. Yep. Don't define me by the number of championships. Define me, do I have great young men in 20 years? And that's what it's about, right? And creating something bigger than just a trophy, right? And just a result and just a scoreboard or getting some stats and stuff like that. Because that feeling's got to fade, right? I've heard too many stories where an athlete's like, I was all in on just winning X, Y, and Z. And then when they win it, 2-3 days later, that feeling goes, right?
Yep, exactly.
So when we're talking about vision, we're talking about something that goes beyond ourselves. So when I think of vision, I think of why is a vision so important? Because it keeps you focused. Yep. It keeps you focused on what's really important, right? And we know all the things that go on. And sports is such an unpredictable environment, right? And so we have all these things that go on. We have X, Y, and Z. We have parents that are sometimes calling. We have kids who are not engaged, but that vision keeps you focused on where you are going. It keeps you fueled. Like every single day, I have the idea of I have to learn or earn my title every single day. I just can't walk in and say, well, I'm Coach Booth, you need to follow me. No, my vision keeps me fueled because I'm here to help our kids unlock their full potential. Like that's my fuel every single day. And then that's my driving force. My vision helps me finish the job, right? That's what I'm here for, is to get these kids, again, ask me in 20 years. Let me see what Johnny's doing. Let me see what Sarah's doing in 20 years. Judge me on that. But again, my role as a coach, my vision is just to be that guide, right? It's that original definition of that coach. Like a coach was just a transport from A to B. Like that is why I show up every single day. I want to get our kids from A to B every single day. That's my fuel.
And just to add to that, Dostoevsky has a great quote. He who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. And that's the most important thing. If you have that why, you can latch onto that during tough times, when things aren't going well, when you're, losing games or whatever, and everybody's saying, oh, what about this, what about that, and questioning what you're doing. But if you have that why, you know you're doing good. And eventually the why becomes apparent to everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say, like I shouldn't have a billboard walking around saying, hey, this is what my why is. Like, we need to live it, right? And so if I show up to your practice, or I show up to your classroom, like, I know, like, if you ever see Mike Hibbs in the classroom, you know what his why is in that classroom. When I show up to a practice, I know what Jared Rust's why is. I know what he stands for. I know what values he embodies his foundation on. So, Jared, talk to me about that concept of values and why that is so important too, making sure we establish those do not alters, those things that we live by every day.
Yeah, I mean, values it's how we don't get lost.
Yeah.
And in the simplest terms, it's how we don't get lost. It's how we find our center again. It's what we fall back on. It's our foundation. It's everything, because it's our why, and the standards within a program, within a classroom, within any group of people that are trying to achieve something. You're not going to achieve anything until you have cohesion and consistency with making sure that you're chasing the same thing if we really want to catch it.
Yeah.
And so that idea of standards and, values, like, it has to, those are the things that we do not bend on within our program. Mm-hmm. It is a thing that is a demand. I'm not going to demand that I never could demand that you're going to win games.
Yeah.
I never could demand that you need to go score 3 goals. But I can demand that your attitude is right, that your effort is there, that your focus is there, that your bravery is there, your execution is there, and your love for one another is there. Mm-hmm. Those are the 6 standards, values that we hold here in our Canterbury Cougar soccer program.
Yeah.
That is a staple. And every player that's played in this program knows it. It is not something you get to choose on. If you want to be part of this brotherhood, part of this family that we build here, those are things we live by. We can have a horrible result. We can have an awesome result. If those things were not attained, that is what we are measuring. And the moment that the team buys into recognizing that that's the measurement we care about, man, does the byproduct and the results start to really all of a sudden climb.
Yep.
And it's like, what? Wait a second. What the heck is going on here? We focus less on winning a soccer match. We focus more on being a good person, a good teammate, a good character, a high-achieving, high-working, high-effort type of individual, and now we're winning more soccer matches.
Yep.
We go back to thinking about winning soccer matches and not caring about who we are. All of a sudden, we're losing matches. It's our sole focus, and we're struggling everywhere else.
Yeah.
And so we use that vision that you were talking about, connected with our standards, as the vehicle. Our program is the vehicle.
Yeah.
The program doesn't really change much. We can massage it. We can adjust little things that we might need different tires on the vehicle. We might need to go get an oil change on the vehicle every once in a while. We might need to make a repair here or there. We might get a little dinged up. But the vehicle is what we trust in. Mm-hmm. The vehicle is what takes us from point A to point B, and that is our program. That is never put on an individual. The individual gets to come and be on that vehicle. Yeah. They get to come be a part of that ride. And with that, it's so much easier for us to stay focused and pointed in the right direction because we're all riding in the same vehicle that has the same standards and the same values. And because of that, it's like, where do we want to go today? Everybody's hopping in the bus. This is our vehicle. This is what we do. Who's next? Who do we want to go play? What do we want to go test? What do we want to put ourselves up against to see what we can withstand? Because we already know we're focusing on our standards. Standards are what matter. We can go play bigger schools, smaller schools. It doesn't matter. The standard is where we want to be, and that's what we're going to measure ourselves against.
I love that. Mike, you want to jump in on this,
Yeah,
this
sure.
whole concept?
Well, the value that I think is most important for any relationship and any team, which involves all kinds of relationships, is trust. And so we center everything around trust. And the only way you can have a solid relationship is if people trust. I know that my mentor would give out to our coaches all the time a paragraph on loyalty. Because he knew that was the most important thing, and that if somebody was disloyal, it was even that little fracture could just explode the whole team. And so I always tell them, my players, that you are not to say anything negative about anyone on this team, about whether that's the manager, whether that's the assistant coach, whether it's me. You can't, because that is the beginning of that disloyalty. And you just have to maintain that loyalty. And I talk to you all the time about it. A couple years ago, when we had 5 new players from a team the year before that was littered with all kinds of seniors who had been here for a while and knew the culture, and then we just had a whole revamp. And it took some time to build that trust. And like you said, though, if I would have just gone to tactics, it would have
no chance.
Yeah, we would have just spun out of control. But because I just kept going, I kept meeting with you, I kept meeting, having you meet with the players, and went back to, okay, what are our standards? Okay, and what are our values? Yes, trust is central to all of this. So if we can get you back to that, and you can trust me, I can trust you, and you can trust each other, well then, like you said, sky's the limit then. Then we don't, it doesn't matter what we run.
And I think hearing you say that, I think this is why we call it the art of coaching, right? Because you could have easily abandoned the values, right? You could have easily abandoned the standards, because again, society is saying that you need to win. We're judging you on this. How many highlight tapes do you have? All right, what's your record right now, coach? What have you done for me lately, right? And we have all this pressure to go away from who we really are, right? So we have to firmly establish those values, because that is your foundation. And when I talk about values, it's a value is not so much a rule. A value for me is more who we are aspiring to be. Right? So when we build that into our culture, and we build it into ourselves, into our own lives, like, it's not always going to show up. There's certain circumstances that are going to happen, and there's going to be certain scenarios I'm put in, but all my decision-making processes is about my values. Is this getting me one step closer to my vision? And that's why we have to stay firm to our values, stick to who we are. But again, it comes back to this idea, is like, we have to know who we are first, right? Before we even get any trust or any buy-in from our kids, again, for me, it comes back to us. So that's why I always challenge our coaches, like, we need to start writing our own leadership story. What does that look like? What does your story look like? And you understand these things are going to show up, these obstacles are going to show up, but the more we know who we are, how we respond to certain situations, why we're showing up to work every single day, who we're aspiring to be every single day, those circumstances just become part of our story. They don't end the story, right? And that's what we want for our coaches, to understand we're here for you. As you're writing this story, you do have mentors, you have people you can reach out to, and this is how we get better. So I don't know if you guys have any closing thoughts on that. We are coming short on time, but I would love to just wrap up on that idea of story. Like, how do you write your story, and how do you navigate this every day?
Well, I think, like, to come back to, the initial purpose of why we felt it was so important to put this together and get it on track, to share it with other coaches, and just have a bigger community of learning in this environment, how many times have just the three of us said, my mentor, my mentor, my mentor? Like, we have those coaches that we have leaned on, that we have taken things from, and we want to now be able to help be that coach for other coaches, because it's really just a perspective. It's just hearing something said a different way, a different idea, a different technique that might just light a spark that's going to be the difference maker in your programs.
Yeah.
So, no, I love it. I think it's just fantastic.
Awesome. Mike, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just think to go along with that is also the focus on process as opposed to result. I mean, I was listening to College Game Day the other day, and Nick Saban is on there, and he said they had him coaching Michigan State, and he said his mentor said something to him, and he changed his whole coaching philosophy from that point on.
Yeah.
And he says, you need to stop focusing on the result. You need to focus on the process. And that's why you need the values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need the values because it's all about process.
Yeah.
And you're going to work with your players to get them where you need them to be. And, you know, obviously you're working on skills and all that. I'm not saying that that's useless. I mean, obviously it's very important. But if you can get them to trust and to buy in and do all that. But like you said, it all comes back to, what's your why? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Yep. And that idea of process and journey, you know, it's continual, right? The process keeps going.
Yes.
Our season might be 3 months. Our season might be 4 months. It's year upon year upon year. And the idea of starting from scratch again is so much more complicated than sticking to what you believe in and continuing that journey rolling. I mean, there's that story of, you know, the current player's responsibility is to plant a seed for a tree to grow, for future players to enjoy its shade.
Yep.
That idea is like, that's epic.
Yeah.
That you can come back to something
100%.
20 years later and be like, I'm one of you. And you enjoyed the things that we fought through for our standards and our identity, so that when you came through, that was a part of you, and then you kept building upon that.
Yeah, right.
That is powerful. I got goosebumps.
Oh, yeah.
And then how can you build a culture if you don't have any values?
Yeah.
If you don't know who you are, and it's impossible to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I think the challenge now, as we're wrapping up, and I just wanted to pose this challenge to those who are listening and coaches who are listening, is take 5-10 minutes, some point tonight, later this weekend, and just really think about what your vision is. What are your values? Like, start thinking about your leadership story. And also, we would love to hear from y'all. So send us your vision. Send us your values. Send it to us via email. Like, that's the other part of this. Again, we are here for you guys. So the challenge is to start thinking about that leadership story. Write down that vision. Write down those values. Understand who you are. Create better buy-in within your programs. And again, like Jared said, let's keep planting these seeds, because ask me in 20, 30 years. That's when I know I'm a successful coach. So we appreciate y'all listening for today. We hope you tune in next week for the Being Champions podcast. Thanks.